Salvete omnes. Welcome to this video lesson on a bit of grammar, ut or ne, subjunctive clauses in Latin. So this, if you're following along in my class, you might come across this topic with subjunctive verbs, typically present and imperfect subjunctive verbs, in chapter 29 of Lingua Latina per se illustrata. So I'm going to go over what's in that chapter as well as a couple other little things too. So ut or ne. So ut, the Latin conjunction, usually means like or as. If it's used with a regular indicative verb, if it's used with just a noun or adjective, like or as, or occasionally when it's used in a question, it can mean how. And ne is going to be kind of the negative equivalent of ut in some subjunctive clauses we're going to look at. First, let's look at some examples of ut when it's used with either an indicative verb or no verb at all, just maybe a noun or adjective. Okay, so these are the normal uses like, as, or how. So examples, Publius ita currit ut decius. Publius runs just as ita ut. So the ita works with the ut here. Often a seek or an ita will work with ut to create a comparison. Publius runs just as or in such a way as Decius. All right, just comparing the two of them. All right, and then the second example, Camilla ut sagita ad hostem volat. Camilla is flying towards the enemy, at the enemy, ut sagita, as an arrow, like an arrow. So this is what we call a simile. When ut is used for like or as, it creates a comparison, and in both these examples, we could call this a simile. All right, and then ut vales. Now here we have a question, which you can tell by the question mark at the end, in the context here. Ut vales is a synonym for the phrase quo modo agis, how are you, how you doing? Ut vales. So again, ut in a question, how, with an indicative verb, ut with an indicative verb or a noun or an adjective or so on, whatever. As long as there's not a subjunctive, probably going to mean like or as. Okay, so now when ut introduces a clause with a subjunctive verb, it's usually going to be translated as that or in order that. In order that's going to be specifically for purpose clauses. You can also do those with so that. But usually the ut will be translated that. If such a subjunctive clause is a negative clause, then ne is typically used instead of the word ut, unless you're dealing with a negative result clause. All right? In a negative result clause, you just go ahead and use the ut, and then you put some other negative in the clause like non or nullus or nemo or whatever. All right, on to the first type of ut or ne clause. This is the purpose clause. Purpose clauses in Latin tell the reason, the purpose for which you do a thing, so that something may or might happen, or will or would happen, in order that something may or might happen, or will or would happen. So the may and will would translate what would be a present subjunctive Latin verb, and might and would translate what would be an imperfect subjunctive Latin verb. Okay, so again, the point of a purpose clause is to say why or for what purpose you do a thing. So let's look at examples. Venio ut te videam. I am coming, venio, ut te videam. Purpose clause, that or in order that, so that I may see you. Now, I can just say I am coming in order that I see you. Now, if I do that, it might sound a little funny to you, and if so, it's because you're not used to this type of grammar in English, but it is correct grammar. It is a use of the present subjunctive in English. In order that I see you, if I drop out the modal or helping verb may, that is a present subjunctive in English. The present subjunctive in English is formed by taking the infinitive in English, to see, to look, to be, and you just remove the to from the front of it. Okay, so again, if I'm translating this, I can say I come so that I, or in order that I see you, or I can say I come in order that, or so that I will see you, or may see you. All of those because videam, with the EA vowel change, is our present subjunctive verb, right? The EA from let's beat a giant friar. Second example, discesserat ne caperator. Now this time we've got the ne, which is just the negative equivalent of ut. He had left, okay, discesserat, or you could say she had left or it had left if you wish. Ne caperator, so that, or in order that, he, she, it would or might not be captured. Now note again here, the would or might is translating the imperfect tense, but in fact you can just drop this out in English grammar. You can say he had left so that he not be captured. If that sounds weird to you, it's a subjunctive in English, but you know, if it sounds fine to you, just let it be. You don't need the would or might. Now, caperator, you can see, is made from capere, the present active infinitive, plus the ending, and that's how you make an imperfect subjunctive, right? All right. Result clauses, next one. These first ones we're going to look at are specifically the adverbial result clauses. A lot of times people just call them result clauses, but they're specifically adverbial result clauses. And here the ut will introduce the result clause, and that'll be used when you have tom, tot, sic, ita, tantus, talis, adeo, some kind of keyword like that in the main clause of the sentence, okay? So in my two examples that follow, you can see the first one has tom in the main clause and the second has tantus in the main clause. I like to call these signpost words. These little words, tom, tot, sic, ita, tantus, talis, adeo, they all mean so or such or so great or something like this, and they tell you that you've got a result clause coming. Sort of like a warning sign, right? So here we go. How do we translate these? Oh, note the suggested translation, that something verb or that something verbed. There is no may or might or will or would in here because result clauses are about things that actually do result, right? Or at least seem to result. So because of that, they're not so iffy as you normally see for subjunctives. So just translate them like a regular old indicative, present or past tense. Here we go. First example. Tom tarde ambulat, so slowly he walks, ut numquam adveniat, that he never arrives. So adveniat is present subjunctive, thus the IA. But you don't want to do anything like would or may or anything like that because this isn't a result of the main clause. He walks so slowly. What happens? The result is that he never arrives. Okay? You could even like throw in an actually if you want. That he actually never arrives. That he really doesn't ever arrive. Okay? Second example. Tantus erat. He was so big, so great. Ut invincibilis esset, or fuerit. That he was unbeatable. All right? Invincible. Now, esset is an imperfect subjunctive made from esse, the present active infinitive, plus the ending. Fuerit, with the eri in there, that is a perfect subjunctive. If you haven't learned that yet, you can just sort of ignore it for now. I threw it in there and I bolded it because occasionally in the past tense, in a past result, you will have a perfect, which violates something called the sequence of tenses in Latin. But essentially all it does in one of these result clauses is it just puts a bit more emphasis on the actuality of the result. He was so big that he actually was invincible, all right? But the esset is fine too, and that's more normal. All right, looking at the next section, noun clauses of result, or also called substantive clauses of result. Substantive as a word essentially means that something acts as a noun. So a noun clause of result or a substantive clause of a result will act as a noun subject or direct object of the main verb. Now the main verb will typically be some form of facio, meaning make or do, efficio, to bring about, to achieve, to effect that something happen, or curo, to see to it or take care that something happen. So here we go, some examples. Factum est ut totum diem pugnarent. It happened, factum est is it happened, that, okay, there's the ut, They fought the whole day or all day. All right, so pugnarent, imperfect subjunctive, because we have a main verb that is past. Factum est is perfect tense. Second example, courant, they take care, present tense, ut ille capillum ornet. Okay, ornet, present subjunctive. We've got the change from the normal A vowel to the E in Let's Beat a Giant Fryer. They take care that he, ille, or that guy, you could say, decorates his hair. All right, so what do they take care of? They take care that he decorates his hair. Another way to say that, and I point this out here, is they make him decorate his hair. They make sure that he decorates his hair. All right, next type, indirect commands. These are also pretty common. Ut or ne, again, will introduce it. And they will come after a main verb of advice, persuasion, or command typically. So imperant, rogare, oro, orare, persuado, persuadere, moneo, monere, various verbs like this. So here we go. Imperant, they order, present tense, ne veneat, that he or she should not come. Notice the ne makes it negative, thus the not. And then the second example, rogavit ut veneremus. He asked or she asked, rogavit, perfect tense, that we should come. Or you could just say that we come if you want. So notice the should can be dropped out. If you drop it out, you're using an English subjunctive. They order that he come. She asked that we come. There we go, dropping out the should, we're using a subjunctive in English. If you like to, put the should in. If you don't, just keep it out. All right, so again, ne for the negative indirect command, ut for the positive. And again, though we call these indirect commands, they're also used with verbs of advice or persuasion, suggesting that somebody do a thing, so they don't have to be exactly commands. All right, on we go. Next is wish clauses, optative noun clauses, that something will or would happen. I hope, spero, that they will leave, ut exeant. Or you could just say, I hope that they leave. Again, we can drop out the will here. And then notice if we switch to a past tense situation, a past tense example, optaverant, they had wished, ne capereris, that you not be captured, or that you would not be captured. So here we can do the will for a present subjunctive or the would for the imperfect subjunctive, as we have here. Or you can just leave the will or would out and go with the English subjunctive, if you like that, if it makes sense for you. So here, the kind of verbs or situations you're going to have, the main clause talking about a wish or a prayer or a hope or an expectation, and then you're going to have an ut or ne clause following it. Now here, I'm not sure what happened, but somehow we cut off the part of the title of this next section. It's fear clauses. Fear clauses essentially are inverted wish clauses. So it's like you take a wish clause and turn it on its head. If you fear that something is going to happen, you're wishing that it won't happen. If you fear that something won't happen, you're wishing that it does happen, right? So it's like you flip it around, right? So I've flipped the ne and the ut because ne here will introduce a positive fear clause, a fear that something will happen, because you would therefore wish that it not. And an ut will introduce a negative fear clause, that is, a fear that something won't happen because you are wishing that it will. Okay, here we go. Tereta est, ne veneat. She was frightened, tereta est, that he would not come, ne veneat. I'm sorry, that he would come. Oops, right? Because this is a wish that he wouldn't, right? It's equivalent of the wish that he wouldn't. So she was frightened that he would come, has to have the ne, right? Has to have the ne. And then in the next example, wereor, that's a deponent verb for fear. I am afraid, wereor, ut ad sint, that they are not here. Now, ut normally is positive, but here we're in a fear clause which sort of turns it on its head. Because we're essentially wishing that they would be here, we're fearing that they aren't here. I fear that they are not here. Well, I hope you learned a few things in this video lesson.